Historically, racial and social justice movements in the United States have been led by organizations and people that are anchored in ministry. Whether we consult a religious text for moral guidance or connect with our higher self, centering ourselves in a greater spiritual awareness helps us discern the work that is ours to do and gives us strength for the challenge. On this episode of Race Talk Revolution with Lane and Eugene, Reverend D. Jacqueline Edwards speaks with us about the spiritual underpinnings of effective social engagement. This episode originally aired September 1st, 2021. It's a good day to have a good day, everybody.
Good morning. Have a good day.
Yeah, indeed. Welcome to Race Talk Revolution with Lane and Eugene. We are so pleased to have you with us this morning. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you if you're watching us on Facebook Live, if you're with us on Zoom. And good morning to the folks at Culture Coffee 2 in Washington, D.C. And thank you, Brother Arnold Murray, for setting that up. We are so pleased to have you joining us this morning for the first time.
Absolutely.
Our speaker this afternoon is Centers for Spiritual Living Minister Reverend D. Jacqueline Edwards, who'll be speaking with us on the topic of revolutionary spirituality for evolutionary change. And as always during our conversation today, we are going to ask that you please remain muted. And when we get to the question and answer section, we will instruct you on how to raise your hand. We also remind you that Race Talk is a loving, respectful, inclusive platform designed to encourage constructive dialogue around tough issues pertaining to racial and social injustice. It is a safe and courageous space for people of all backgrounds to share ideas and opinions, to explore the nuances of systemic racism and grow our anti-racism muscles together, to share and learn from our lived experiences. In our Race Talk community, we practice radically inclusive love. Even when we don't understand or agree with what's being shared, we listen with respect and appreciation and empathy, because our commitment here at Race Talk Revolution is that every person be encouraged and heard and appreciated, because on Race Talk Revolution, every voice matters. And with that, thank you one more time for being here. I turn it over to my co-host, my handsome co-host, Reverend Eugene Holder.
Hey, good morning, Race Talk Revolution family. So now usually it's me who does the first part and Lane does the introduction. And we wanted to switch. Well, I wanted to switch this time because our guest today is a very dear, good friend of mine. This is the Reverend D. Jacqueline Edwards. Reverend Jacqueline is an ordained Centers for Spiritual Living minister. She is currently serving as the Community and Civic Engagement Staff Minister at East Bay Church of Religious Science. Go East Bay. She has previously served as a senior minister at First Church of Religious Science in Vallejo, California, and was the founding member and past chair of the Centers for Spiritual Living Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity Committee. Reverend Jacqueline is currently a member of the CSL Spiritually Motivated, Socially Engaged Committee, which prepares statements related to current events and issues under the leadership of the spiritual leader of the organization, Dr. Veyoun, Edward Veyoun. Reverend Jacqueline has a personal vision of creating a world in which everyone has the opportunity to thrive. Reverend Jacqueline believes that spiritual communities are uniquely positioned in these days to build a support, inclusive, ethically, economically, and socially diverse, prosperous communities that celebrate life. Reverend Jacqueline has a bachelor's degree in human relations and a master's degree in organizational development and change, and also in consciousness studies. Reverend Jacqueline has over 20 years experience in the public sector resource management field. Her ministry emphasizes spirituality as a path to prosperity, justice, and peace. Today, Reverend Jacqueline will talk with us about the connection between spirituality and activism, and how staying centered spiritually can help us connect with the work that is ours to do, and actually to get out there and to do it. Reverend Jacqueline, I want to welcome you to our Race Talk Revolution family. Good to see you. Good to be with you. Glad that you are here.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am deeply, deeply grateful to be here. And I would like to start, as I start all things, with just a moment of prayer, if you will, especially since we're talking about spirituality today. And so, what I know is that the God that is the good to which there is no opposite is always and in always permeating every single cell and fiber of our bodies, and that God is today in this place that we call Race Talk, permeating and absolutely acting in, as, and through the conversation between and as and among each one of us. And so it is with a deep and humble sense of gratitude that I both release this word and open this conversation with a big, huge yes from the heart, of the heart, as the heart. Thank you, Mother, Father, God, and so it is. Ashe. Amen.
Man, thank you.
Thank you.
Reverend Jacqueline, let me just start this off.
Okay.
So you mentioned that much of your work of social justice has been anchored in ministry, suggesting that there is a spiritual foundation for such work. Then you also had mentioned that you believe that it is 99% that it is a 99% possibility that the change the world is calling for is by necessity being led by people of color and Black people in particular. Could you talk about why you believe this, please?
Well, let's just jump right in, shall we? So on the first piece, briefly by way of my personal life experience, I had the experience of yo-yoing back and forth between let me do my social justice work and let me do my spiritual work. Let me do my social justice work, let me do my spiritual work. And what I continuously found is that when I was doing my spiritual work alone, that my life flourished, my money got good, my relationships were all working, but my heart was seeing and feeling what was going on in the world and wanting to be a part of that as well. When I only did, and by only I mean primarily did, or separated, which is what we do, we tend to think that they're two different things. When I separated my social justice work from my spiritual work, my life went to that proverbial hell in a handbasket. Things started getting real interesting, as they do when I'm focusing on when we are coming from a place of being the victim of what's bad, wrong, and awful, of what needs to be fixed. It was not until I went to that place that we know, that we've heard, that many of us have grown up with that idea of in all things, put spirit first. It was not until that started happening that the thing started working. It was not until every action, every activity, every article, everything started with the spirituality, with the God work, if you will, or the Oludumare, and I may get a chance to speak on that a little bit more later on. Although actually the Oludumare part very much weaves into the second part of the question as to who and why and what and when and the logistics of the thing, if you will. But just to wrap up this piece, once the marriage of the spirituality, once the spirituality was established for me as a foundation, then the social justice work took off. And it took off in ways that I could not imagine. For example, here I am on Race Talk. Second part of that, the why is it that people of color are in the lead of the work that's being done? I could kind of facetiously, perhaps maybe even a little sarcastically say, because we are and because we always have been in one way or another. And the bigger, broader piece of that is that our experience over millennia, our experience more specifically in terms of the United States, if we're talking about an American experience, the work that we have done here, we have always been in the lead of the movements, be it the civil rights movement, the women's suffrage movement, the going back to the Civil War, going all the way back to the Revolutionary War. We have always been up in it. And part of what we have always brought with that is our anchoring in our spirituality, in the things that our moms and dads and grandparents taught us as children from the knee, that plays from the heart, those sayings, if you will, that guide I'm going to specifically right now call out our moral compass, if you will. So we as Black people in particular, and people of color in general, as we understand, as we see our indigenous brothers and sisters showing up all over the planet and saying, hold up, this is what needs to happen, and this is the premise from which it needs to springboard. These ideas and ways of being in movement, in evolving us to our greater yet to be, are our roles that are, I'm going to say, organic to who we are, who we have been, as well as who we are becoming. And the last piece that I just have to throw out there, which I think we're all aware of, is that we have and are the cultural thread that runs around the globe. Mm-hmm. Now I could keep talking, but should I, or should I pause?
I like that last part, but I want to ask it. Yes, no, well, let me just keep going with this, okay? So, and also I want to bring this in, because when we're talking about spirituality is an individual thing, right? It's different for everyone. You know, how people experience and connect with spirit is not a one size fits all. Because you connect with it differently than I do, from how Lane does, from how everybody else does. So you say that when we were speaking earlier, you say that we've been lazy and that we have been wanting others to do our spiritual work for us. What do you say? Why do you say that? And what has that cost us?
So starting at the end, what it has cost us is the sharpening. It has cost us being in tune with our souls, if you will, in a way that does not only not serve us as individuals, it does not serve us collectively as people, it does not serve us as humanity. So we have within us, each one of us, we have the ability, we have that still small voice within, if you will, and we have the ability to tap into that, to ask the specific question, what is mine to do? But in order to hear that voice, we have to bring our attention away from all the noise that is around us, the noise that is telling us what is ours to do, the noise that is giving snippets of information, and turn to that within that says to us individually. We're talking about the individual experience now. This is the book that you need to be reading right now. This is the practice that you should be engaged in right now. This is the meeting that you should go to right now. This is the information that you should avail yourself of. What I believe and what I teach is that we are individualized expressions of the divine. So what that means is that you and I, all of us, everyone here, we could all read the same material and come away from that material with something different, with a different nugget that then becomes our nugget. It then becomes the thing that we get to put into the mix. But in order for that to happen, we have to go read the thing. We have to use the skills and the talents and the ability that we have to discern what is true on an everyday conscious way, and in a way that we can verify. This stuff is verifiable. It's not a maybe. When I start doing the research, I'll use that term, that is mine to do, I know that it's mine by the way that it resonates with me. And then when I use that information to frame my work, again, I know that it was my path because there's a resonance with it. Is that clear?
Yeah, but I also want to just say something about, because that phrase, still small voice, it may not be an average thing that everybody on the screen here, knows. So what I would like to say is that still small voice is your intuition. It's that gut
Yes.
feeling. It is that hunch, right? It's
Yes.
that part that says, you should check this out, or go left or go right. Yeah, that's what I just wanted to bring that clarity there. Yeah, about that.
Thank you. And I want to just again emphasize a little bit more directly and specifically that if we are tapping into, and we have the news here, I live in Oakland, California. The news comes on at least 8 times in any given day. If we are tapping into that as our source, we're not only misled and misguided, but we are also very upset. We're running around being upset all day long, which means that then when I go to sleep, I'm not even getting a restful sleep because I've let myself be bombarded with this stuff, most of which I won't say is so much not true. It is true that we pulled out of Afghanistan, but is inaccurate in the detail of it, right? So there is a requirement, a responsibility that we have, just sticking with the example of Afghanistan, for example, there is a responsibility that we have as individuals to do our own research, to look at how do we go from, we're going back to 9/11, 20th anniversary coming up. How do we go from 9/11 happens, the president of the United States tells us to go shopping, and then takes us into Afghanistan? What were all of the other things that were going on in the world at the time? And why is there even a Taliban? And I'm not wanting to drill into those things right now in this venue, but I am wanting all of us to do our own research, to know, and then from that knowing, know what is it that is mine to do? Yeah. What is it that is mine to say? What is it that is mine to teach? Who is it that who are the people that are in my circle of influence that I am here to influence? Because if I'm on the planet right now, then I have a part to play in the evolutionary process that we are undergoing right now.
And truly, we are going through an evolutionary process. In fact, that makes me want to say that we here on the Race Talk Revolution, we are not only revolutionaries, we are evolutionaries, right? Absolutely. We are here to stand, and we are looking at, what is ours to do in getting to that point where we get to end systemic racism in America. Let's start there, right? And then the world. This is good stuff. Listening to that hunch within, listening to that which is within all of us, going, you know, something's not quite right. And what can I do? What is mine to do?
So I want to also dovetail on that a little bit on the systemic racism piece, that yes, it is in the United States and it is global.
Yes, it is.
And there are ways in which it is so interwoven. It's almost as if, and perhaps not almost, we have come through phases of separation where we did not see or perhaps did not make the deep dive connections between the institution of slavery and colonialism, between the way both of those institutions not only created systemic racism, but created in those of us who were most severely impacted, created in us some spaces for healing, some opportunities for healing for ourselves as well as for our communities. And in those opportunities for healing, there are also opportunities for us to see each other differently. And now while I'm speaking specifically of how we as Black people on the planet see each other differently than we may have been taught to see each other. I'm talking a little bit about internalized racism now. I'm also very, very, very importantly saying that part of our leadership in teaching and experiencing and expressing with each other differently as African people, people of the African diaspora, there is also in that the building of the tools that we get to use in our teaching, not only how we teach everyone else to work with and be with us, but how we then grow our muscles so that cross-culturally, so that everyone on the planet is having relationships with each other that are powerful, that are respectful, that are love-based, and that are collectively, now I'm saying everybody, Black, white, yellow, green, blue, turquoise, whatever, right? Or however we choose to identify that. And I'm not taking it lightly. I consider myself to be African American. But I'm saying that the work builds upon the work, and that this ultimate goal, and in my particular religious or spiritual practice, as part of our creed, we have one sentence that says, we believe that the ultimate goal, that freedom is the ultimate goal, that this goal shall be realized by everybody. But the way for that goal of freedom to be realized by everyone, again, comes back to, it starts with the individual, it extends to family, it goes to community, and then it goes out more globally. And we as Black people, as people of color, probably, and I can't say this, I haven't done the scientific research, but I think probably have both the largest amount of deep healing to do, as we are finally in a place where we're even recognizing the trauma, right? We're talking about trauma these days. So we have a lot of the healing to do. And whenever you're the one that has the deep work to do, that means that you're the one that gets to lead everyone else in doing the deep work as well.
Lane, I know you have something to say there. No? Okay. Yes, but that is so true, right? Whew.
That's the good news and the bad news. The good news is now we are aware. The bad news is go, lead, make other people aware. And it's all the good news.
It's all the
right?
good news.
It's all
Right.
the good news. It's the perspective. And I'm just loving this conversation. And thank you for saying that, because we all have that work to do. And it's not always going to feel like a great idea.
Yeah. Norman, I do see that your hand is up, but if you hang on just a little bit longer, okay, brother? Thanks. Dr. Jacqueline, Reverend Jacqueline, it's the D. Ask my sister though. One of your core messages is that we need to identify the work that is ours to do, and that knowing what is ours to do is both consistent and anchored in our spirituality. Can you explain a little bit about what you mean about that?
So,
and then tell us how we can do that, or at least point us in the direction.
I might have some ideas. So there is precedent, right? And in ministry, although I'm very delightedly hearing this term applied in broader and broader spheres, in ministry we call it the call, right? So we step into, again, personalize it a little bit. I stepped into, in my spirituality, in our organization, we have some levels of expanded spiritual experience. So you take some classes, you start applying the principles, and I'm going to interweave some of those. So, meditation. And meditation, I absolutely want to share with you, is in every major spiritual, not just major, every spiritual practice on the planet has some form of meditation, which was actually a surprise to me to find that out. But in many denominations, you don't get that unless you go to seminary. And then it may or may not filter down to the congregation. But meditation is one of our primary tools. But let me come back. So I start on my little path. My life is getting good. I'm praying more often. I'm meditating. I've even learned this thing called visioning, which if time, we'll talk about that a little bit more, because visioning is one of the most powerful tools for knowing what is yours to do. I'm doing this. My life gets better. I'm a helper. I've always known that. My high school yearbook says that I was going to be a social worker. So I continue on this path, and eventually I become a practitioner, which is a prayer counselor. Then at that point, by the way, ministry is like the last thing that I'm about doing. Howsoever, it keeps pulling, it keeps calling. And I believe that every person on this call has something that keeps pulling that we try to ignore. What are you? Moi? That is our call. That thing is what we are called upon to do. And so we get to then pursue that, although once we say yes to it, there's a miracle that happens. The whole world just opens up. The class that you need to take, if there's a class, the help that you need, you meet strangers you're sitting at the airport thinking you're minding your business, reading whatever little magazine you just picked up to read, and somebody sits down beside you and starts talking to you about your thing. Because that's the way it works. Some people call that the law of attraction. Some people call that spirit in action. Some people call that the divine yes. I like the divine yes myself.
Synchronicity.
Synchronicity. There we go. Synchronicity.
Can I say something too? I know we're going to move on, but this is so yummy. And we here on Race Talk, our Race Talk community, we're all folks of a certain age, let me just say.
And watch it.
This applies to all of us. It is never too late to say yes to the universe, because the universe is open for us to step in to whatever it is. And because exactly what you said, if we are still here, there is a purpose and a reason and a way.
Amen. Absolutely. Amen.
There was something that my dear friend Reverend Jacqueline said to me a while ago. And that has stuck with me, for times such as these. And so what I've done with that phrase is, if we are here on the planet at this time, we came here at this time, and from my opinion, from my perspective, purposely to do the work that we are here to do. Right. And it's an interesting thing because we are in some interesting times. Right. So now we get to listen to that still sacred voice. I call it sacred because mine's not small. We get to listen to the intuition. We get to listen to what hurts my heart. What's the pain? And then I get to go, okay, so what is mine to do? And so that spiritual practice of meditation, which is across the board, is an important thing, because what it is really asking us to do is to take a look at what's going on. One of the things I want to also say is that we don't want to do what is called a spiritual bypass, right? And pretend like it's all good. Now, ultimately, yes, it is all good. However, we don't want to stick our heads in the sand and pretending like this stuff is not going on, because this stuff is going on. Now, my meditation, getting into whatever my spiritual practice is for me, then informs me of, okay, now, who am I to be in this? And what is mine to do? What is mine to do? But it takes a willingness to listen to that. I think it was Lane who put in the chat, the spiritual work, or the work is to hear it, to listen to it, and then don't ignore it. Don't ignore it. For years, and Lane and I, we have, around the same story. That's why Race Talk is here, right? Is we got tired of well, for me, let me speak for me, of ignoring that little voice going, you need to speak up. There are things for you to do. There are things for you to, and then it finally showed up, that little voice showed up as Lane Cobb. And now here we are a year later, and all of us here on Race Talk Revolution, we are doing some great work here. Whew.
So I'd like to take a moment and talk about some specific spiritual tools. And I think I'm actually wanting to start with visioning. And I have to, if we talk about visioning, give a huge shout out to Reverend Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith. And I want to suggest, if you do not have the book, Life Visioning, that you go out and get yourself one. And it is the beauty of the work is that it's non-denominational and it's all denominational. That it is written in a way and it addresses our 4 life areas in a way that we can all relate to, no matter what our spiritual foundation or springboard may be. Visioning is a process whereby we literally ask, what would you have me do? The very first question is, what is Spirit's highest vision, our deepest vision, our widest, our broadest, our most profound vision for any area of your life that you would like to ask about, or for my life in general? So that is the first question. And then just being within what I'm going to call the 5 question standard, because there are all kinds of opportunities to expand those questions, we get to ask, what do I need to release? Because typically we know if my life is going in a particular direction, there is something that I don't want it to be going in, then there is something that I am doing, or some idea or some viewpoint that I'm holding on to that's keeping me in this trajectory. So what do I need to release is the second question, or a possible second question. Thirdly, once we release, we have this idea from physics that the universe abhors a vacuum. What do I need to release? We go into what do I need to embrace? What do I need to receive? What do I need to wrap myself around? What do I need to accept, if you will? And then as I'm looking at what I'm letting go, what I'm taking in, there's a pretty good chance that the very way in which I walk the world may need to shift. And thus we ask the question, who do I need to become? Who or what do I need to become for this vision to manifest? Who or what do I need to become? And finally, because as much as we want to believe we know it all, there's a pretty good chance we don't. And so our last question is always, is there anything else? Is there anything else to be revealed at this time? Okay. So those are your 5 basic visioning questions, and I still want you to go out and buy the book. I want to say that prayer is something that you do however you do it, if you do it. For some people, the spiritual practice is walking in the woods. One of my spiritual teachers says that if you are living in a place where you can, that your bare feet should touch the ground, the earth, not the concrete, not the cement, not the blacktop, but the earth every day. That every day you should take the opportunity to do that. Why? Because we recognize that the divine is everywhere present, including, and some of us would say, especially in the Mother Earth, right? So prayer is what you do. That's what you do. Meditation, again, is what and how you do it. For some of us, for me, I have to sit in the silence. I have to sit with that at least once every day. Your time in meditation, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20, that's up to you to discern through your practice. But what I can promise you is that whatever your form of meditation, if it is a walking meditation, that you will learn more from that, that you will have more revealed to you from that than you will get from the 6 o'clock news. So if it's a matter of time, then I want to suggest that you take any one of those news programs that you may be watching and substitute some spiritual practice for that time. Just for that time. Just even if, I understand sometimes we just gotta, open one eye and see what are they talking about. Take 15 minutes and then go see what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So we touch on visioning, prayer, and meditation. The last piece is the piece of affirmation, and this is where we get in trouble. And by we, I mean those of us in New Thought, Ancient Wisdom, right? We tell people, declare a thing, speak your word unto a thing and make it so. So I want to start with affirmation, very much like prayer actually, is for us. It's for us as individuals. What happens when I speak my affirmation or my prayer out loud as it comes out of my mouth? It goes into my ear. I hear it first and foremost. And as I am hearing it first and foremost, I am shifting my cellular structure, if you will, to be in alignment with the thing that I am claiming for myself. So affirmations are statements that we make that declare the thing that we are seeing. I see a just and equitable world in which everyone has the opportunity to thrive. I see, declare, and know that I live in a world in which everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
Yes.
So what does that look like in terms of, actually, I hear the question, oh, really? You see that? Well, you must be doing something to bring that about, dear Jacqueline. So what are you up to have that happen? Now that's my global, my personal. I am in perfect health. Every single cell and fiber of my body is in perfect operating order. And because I declare that, my body wakes me up at 6:30 in the morning and says, get on that yoga class.
Because that's yours to do.
Because I cannot do what is mine to do. I'm circling back now.
Yeah.
I cannot do my work in the world if my body can't move from point A to point B. I cannot do my work in the world. And yes, I'm working my way up to having you consider, not take as a gospel, but consider that exercise might be a spiritual practice. I'm just inviting you to give that a little thought.
Well,
right? Because if we are not doing the things we need to do to carry and take care of the vessel that carries the spirit around in the world, if we're not doing those things, then I would question our commitment to the cause, right? It's easy to say that I am a person who believes in justice in the world and I'm doing what I need to do to bring that about. It's easy to say, well, I gave some money to Reverend Dr. William Barber last week. I want you to do that, and I want you to continue giving money to Reverend Dr. William Barber and to Race Talk and to wherever it is that you are spiritually fed. Absolutely continue to do that. In fact, I'm actually wanting you to expand the money that you give, because by the way, as you expand the money that you give, you're expanding the money that you receive so that you have more money. The revolution is not free. It is not free. No march is free. None of the legislative things that happen are free. None of the food that goes to the people that are doing the work, none of that is free, y'all. We are the ones that we have been waiting for. And in order to do what we're here to do, we must do our spiritual practices, and we must allow that to be our guide in the work. Prayer, meditation, visioning, affirmation, exercise. And you know, with exercise, diet, right eating, and all of that goes along with that. Now, I like a brownie as much as the next person, but wheat is not my friend. So I went out and discovered, once I made a commitment, hear what I'm saying. Once I made a commitment, I know that wheat is not my friend. I can tell by what happens when I eat it. Gluten-free brownies started showing up in my life, but there's still the sugar there. So I can't eat that stuff every day, right? And I know I'm not just talking for myself.
I want to circle back to one thing, Reverend Jacqueline, and then I want to open it up for some questions. I want to come back to, the revolutionary. We hear the term revolutionary used to describe the people who are fighting for change. And you suggested that we think of ourselves as evolutionaries, which is an amazing thing, right? We are evolutionaries. But here's the question for you. What do you want people to know about who we are being right now? What do you want us to know about who we are being right now?
So my belief is, and I have a friend who uses the term change angels. I still use the term change agents. We are change agents. Evolution is a natural process that takes place. I'm going to say that evolution has historically been a natural process that has taken place. Where we are right now is that we get to be conscious evolutionaries. That means that in the same way that we have collectively as humanity, I'm talking about, in the same way that we have used our intellectual as well as our spiritual, as well as our emotional, as well as really all of our talents and skills to develop vaccines, to develop, I don't know, inside plumbing, all of those things in response to needs that we have and have had. We now have a need, not just a desire. We have a need. And the reason we have a need is because the path that the world, that the planet has been on, has been one that's taking us down a road that we know is not going to have a happy ending if we continue in the direction that we're going. So we have a need to consciously evolve, grow, and in evolution, there is what appears to be, and I think is, in these various periods, quantum leaps, right? So we've been living in a quantum leap period. If we look at, earlier Lane was referring to the generation that's on this call. I've actually invited some younger people to participate too, and I want to say that one of the jobs that we have is to get behind these fabulous young people who are very clear that they're here to do some conscious evolution and to support them. But one of the things that we can see in our generation is how many things have changed, not just in our lifetimes. I'm just going to say in the last, oh my God, am I going to say 30 years? I actually should say 40 years, but I'm wincing a little bit. Put your hand down, Tyrone. I'm not going to 50. That's not going to happen. But in a lot and not a lot of years. In a lot and not a lot of years. My mother insisted that she know where I was going when I went to a friend's house, because I got there and I picked up their landline and called them. The term landline wasn't even a thing. Just within this week, aside from the fact that we all now have cell phones, just this week, it occurred to me that compact discs are now becoming a thing of the past, right? Because somebody said that in some conversation and made me kind of go, what? Huh? Oh, okay. We are living in an era of quantum leap. And so what we are called upon to do is to give what, and I'm saying everybody's got a part in this, someone, and the someone was actually Mao Zedong, called plan conscious character to our quantum leaping. That means that we get to pick the direction that we want to go in and move in that direction, as opposed to being accidental victims.
Yeah. Thank you.
If I may, because I said something about, because I brought Brother Mao into the room, I do want to make a comment that I made from the pulpit not too long ago. I'm not anti-capitalist. I'm anti-capitalism as is practiced in the world today. And maybe what I'm really up to, and I think maybe it's not even a maybe, is that what we're up to, and this fits into this idea of conscious evolution, is creating something entirely new. There's the idea of don't be scared. If we're not scared about what all is going on in the world out there, then we most certainly should not be scared about any kind of systems or ways of being in the world that we could create. It's got to be better.
Mm.
It can't, it cannot help but be better. And this is not to say that there are not some wonderful, wonderful things going on in the world, because there are. There are people who are clear. I yesterday read that in order to get vaccinations out, and I think I'm sounding pro-vaccine, I'm neither pro nor anti, but in order to get vaccines out, the United Nations is trying to ask for a uniform ceasefire all over the world. Right? That no matter what your beef is, and no matter who your beef is with, if you could just take a time out for, say, 30 days so we can get people vaccinated, we'd appreciate that. And then you can go back to whatever your thing is. And there is historical precedent for that. That was done with the polio vaccine. There was a request that if you could just stop fighting for a moment, just give us 5 days to get this work done. Now, the interesting thing, when we look at that in the context of today, in the context of the tools that we have, of the information that we have, of the things that we know, there is also the opportunity in that ceasefire time for us to look at how might we actually have and create sustaining peace on earth. Just as I believe that Black people are in the forefront of leading the change, both the intellectual and the physical change that we are calling for, I also believe that peace on earth is one of the primary things that we have to go for. Now, circling back just a little bit to the piece of what is mine to do, there is something about war. There is something about the expression and the experience of war that even as I'm talking about it now, that it strikes my heart in such a way that I know that some part of my work on this planet is to address this piece of peace on earth, this idea, this concept of peace on earth. So again, I'm coming back to, how do you know what is yours to do? Because you feel it, because it speaks to you, because it touches your heart, it touches your soul. And
with that,
Yeah.
thank you. Folks, we'd like to open the floor for Q&A. I know that Norman has had his hand up, and also Tyrone. If you have a question, please go ahead and raise your hand. I know that we're going to have a whole lot of folks probably want to get in on this conversation. This has been just absolutely yummy conversation. Just thank you so much. If you go to the bottom of your screen, and there's a little guy with a smiley face that says reactions, you can hit there, and that will say raise your hand. You can also find your name in the participants area, and you can raise your hand that way as well. So, Brother Norman.
Yes, how are you doing?
hi.
A lot of what I seem to be hearing is is what they call victim blaming. To say that there's something that Black people can do to change things. I mean, the racism that exists in this country, the systemic racism, it's not an accident. It was done on purpose. And the only people that can stop it are the people that started it, because they know that it's being done. A lot of us don't believe that anything is being done, that's just the natural order of things. It's not. I don't see anything that I could do other than arming myself that's going to change my life. It's going to change the world. I'm on my way out the door, so I'm not really that concerned about me. I am concerned about the world that my grandchildren are going to be living in. And I don't see how me telling them that they need to change is going to help them. That's all I have to say.
So I want to say thank you so very, very much for bringing that to the forefront. I've watched a few of the race talks, and I know that you are present-based and you always have something insightful to say. And I'm thanking you because I want to be 1,000,000% clear that I am in no way blaming the victim.
I'm not.
I want to say that we cannot wait for what's the guy's name? He's the minority chair in the Senate.
Mitch McConnell?
Mitch McConnell, yes, ditch Mitch. We cannot wait for Mitch to change his mind. That's just, I don't know. I'm not saying it won't happen. It could happen. That's not my interest area. When I'm saying that it is our work to do, I am saying that our work is to, in fact, for as an example, identify who is my audience. For example, you have grandchildren. You have children, you have grandchildren, you have people that you influence. You influence people on Race Talk every week because you're here pretty regularly and typically you have a comment. So once I identify, and I'm suggesting that the way I identify is through my spiritual practices, that I ask, Spirit, what is it that is mine to do? Once I identify what it is that is mine to do, and I influence those people that I have the opportunity to influence, and join up with other folk on the same path, that I am doing my work. Does that make sense?
It does, but your work is the work that one person can do.
Mm-hmm.
My work is the work that one person can do.
Mm-hmm.
And there needs to be a collective work.
Exactly.
So
Thank you.
here's the thing, and yes, Lane, and here's the thing about what you just said, my brother Norman. Look at the collective work that we're doing here. We have right now, we had a total of 60 people on. Mm-hmm. This is a collective work. Yeah, this is good. Norman, thank you so very much.
Sure.
What's up, D. Jacqueline?
What's up, Tyrone Cozy?
So, growing up in New York and Harlem, as I know you did, just as I grew up in Chicago, and when we
Why are
first
you
hooked,
putting my business in the street?
I'm
Go
I'm
ahead.
putting it out there. And
Mm-hmm.
when we got together, when we used to hang out, years ago in our 20s, both of us were from that generation who said, well, Dr. King was cool, but he was a little too soft. He is a little bit too, we love everybody shit. And we were much more militant than that. But over the years, since we both kind of grew up in this spiritual practice together in our own ways, there's been changes obviously that has occurred within us. So I want you to talk a little bit about the concept of surrender. Now,
Hmm.
how does the concept of surrender fit into a point where you and I would have last word we would have said was the surrender, right? We've been like, let's we're up there, we're in the mix, we're gonna fight this, but then there's a shift, and so I see an interesting relationship between surrender and empowerment, and I want you to speak on that a little bit, please.
So
And I
you
think that
might have to
ties in.
speak. You
I
might
think it
have to
ties
speak
into.
on how you see the connection, but I'm going to say this. So surrender is a spiritual principle. There's a wonderful song by Ricky Byers Beck with I release and I let go. I let the spirit run my life. And it is not an either or, it is an and. There is not just room for, but need for all of it. So in my growing up, while in my younger, I, yes, was more of a student nonviolent coordinating committee person, much more so than I was a NAACP person, shall we say, if we can look at that. Um, in my maturity, what I understand is that it's a both. It's not an either or, it's a both. The way the principle of surrender works for me, has worked in my life, is that as I surrender, it's what I've been talking about the whole time. As I let go and let spirit reveal what is mine to do, as I let go, my vision is expanded. What I see and how I see and the approach is both expanded and appropriate. I'm going to narrow it back down because I think the same principle applies. When I'm doing spiritual counseling with a person, and we often have had this idea that you shouldn't be angry, you shouldn't be pissed off, you shouldn't be upset. This conversation that we're having about trauma right now is acknowledging the anger and the pissosity and the upset. When I take action, my action should not come from that place. But I need to not only acknowledge my anger, acknowledge my upset, but I need to work through it. I need to do the work to carry me through it, such that when I come to the problem, and we don't like to use that word either in our metaphysics. But when I come to the problem, when I'm facing the problem, I can go into my toolbox and pull out whatever I need to pull out. But the difference is that I am not coming from, I'm not being reactionary, but I'm being proaction. I'm being proactive. And I'm being proactive because the tool that I need to pull out might be my big, loud, what is the matter with you voice. It might be the have you lost your mind voice, but it's not coming from a belief that you've actually lost your mind. It's coming from what has evolved in this point in the conversation or point in the experience where you have demonstrated to me that my rational, and I'm using regular everyday language here, that my calmer approach is just, it's not working. So I need to reach into my toolbox and pull out something else. When the people attacked the Capitol on January 6th, that was an insurrection. Now, there are people that want to call it something else. I'm clear in my surrender. This is where the place we're talking about. In my surrender, which is why the spiritual practices are so important. In my letting go and letting God lead, guide, and direct me, then it is how do I wordsmith whatever my verbiage or my response needs to be in a way that it can be heard, understood, appreciated, and acted upon, because there's an action piece by the greatest number of people. So in summary, surrender is a spiritual practice which I absolutely support. And what I've learned over the years is that it's not an either or. That's what surrender has taught me. It's not an either or, it's a both and.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Tyrone. One of the things we have Judith and Joe Majak and Reverend Chris, but before we get there, Chemnist has asked a question in the chat, but I also want to say this, Reverend Edwards, thank you for pointing to that we do need to take some action, right? Action, healing action, and there is an operative word called action, right? So I have this idea that I was going to go on a talk show and talk about why affirmations don't work, right? And affirmations absolutely do work. And if you sit still and just have affirmations all day, that is not, right? That is not what your spirit is actually calling you to do. That is not the end of the conversation, right? So that's, I think, Norman, just thank you. And everyone who's saying, yes, absolutely. Affirmations, love, connection, conversation, and actually having some action that shows up in the world, that is also healing. That is transformational. That brings new energy into the world. And it is absolutely a both and. Chemnist actually asked a question and wants to know how do we actually have this conversation with people who feel like there is no mind to do for them? And I'm also going to say, in the interest of time, I know we want to streamline our questions and our answers. So thank you.
And I'll be very quick with this. There is, if I'm going to just repeat, if you're on the planet right now, there is something for you to do. The thing for you to do may be to write a check.
All righty, there you go. And you heard it here. Judith.
So I just want to thank Reverend Dr. Jacqueline Edwards. Your message is so inspirational, and it also transcends time and evokes the messages of the ancestors. And a statement that you made a few minutes ago with regards to getting in touch with the work that you need to do, you brought to mind Harriet Tubman. Now, Harriet Tubman talks about how she went through a spiritual struggle that brought her to the point of asking her father, how do I survive in the woods? And then getting out there and finding a path that had never been created to bringing herself, and the numbers range between 300 and 700 people to freedom. And so I'm just feeling all of this as you're talking about that spiritual, what brought her to the point of surrender, because that was surrender. She came to the point of surrender in order to be able to launch that journey several times. Now, in Baltimore, I don't know if anyone was watching Good Morning America. I'm sorry, Sunday morning, this past Sunday. There was a segment that just broke my heart about how the percentage of homicides in the Black community in Baltimore is something like 90% of Black people killing Black people. And so this brings me to the point of work that we need to do, the kind of work that Dr. Jacqueline Edwards is talking about to bring about a spiritual reawakening. Because see, the spirit that brought Harriet Tubman to freedom is in Black people, all Black people. It's there.
DNA.
Has to be a reawakening among many. And now let me just also say this about Harriet Tubman. She didn't do it by herself. She did it with the assistance of everybody, people who look like everybody on this screen.
Mm-hmm.
The safe houses were provided by people who were not necessarily African Americans. Many were, but many were not. And so when we think about what needs to be done, it needs to be done collectively. It needs to be done jointly, representing people on this page in this meeting.
Thank you, Judith. Is there a question
No,
for Dr. Edwards?
I just have a question. My question is, how can I connect with her? How can I get in touch with her? That's my question, because I want to learn what she knows, and I want to continue to grow my learning through what she is teaching. That's my question.
All right, thank you. Dr. Edwards, I will share your information in the chat if that works for you.
It absolutely does.
All right, thank you. Joseph Majak, please.
Thank you, Lane. I wanted to just talk a little bit about going back to the question of things to do. And what I wanted to share was how incredibly valuable it was for me when I got to the tipping point where I could no longer stand on the sidelines and watch and just watch the systemic racism continue, and got to the point where I felt like my silence, like many people that look like me, was complicit in allowing the system to go forward. I decided to do some things differently. I joined a group at church dedicated to anti-racism. I joined the NAACP chapter. And you know what my biggest lesson was? As I was working through my discomfort in being in an environment that wasn't familiar to me, the thing that kept me going and kept me committed was the openness of people of color to share their experiences when I was curious about it and had no idea about the depth and the persistence and the everyday hurt that folks experienced. And so for folks, for individuals who maybe I can't understand the notion that I'm being asked to change, I'm the person that's being oppressed, and now the people, the white supremacists want me to change how I behave to help them. I can't understand it because I'm not a person of color, but I can absolutely appreciate it, and my heart goes out to that. And I guess my only response and hope is please don't give up on folks like us that look like I do, that want to be allies. If you can just open yourself up, and when we ask to share an experience and just try to put up with our lack of knowledge, but please don't give up on us, because we're trying. And I think moments like this in the last 2 years are tipping more people over. I just hope you don't give up on us, because there are many of us that have had it, and we could benefit from those experiences. So please don't give up hope.
So I do want to make a brief comment there. The first piece is that it's both and, right? In diversity teaching, we have the thing that we call oops and ouch, right? I say something that I'm just coming out of left field, or it feels like that to you, but I don't know that, right? So your responsibility is to say ouch. When you say ouch and explain to me what just transpired there, right? I get to both apologize for it, and that's my oops. I didn't, and it was not my intention to do that. And then from there, we can go forth in conversation. This is, again, when I go back to everyone on the planet, that's regardless of color, creed, ethnicity, gender, everyone on the planet has a role to play in evolving us to our greater yet to be. And I'm going to stop there and be complete. And thank you for your comments.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Joe. Reverend Long.
Good day to you all. I cannot thank you enough, Reverend Dr. Edwards, and all the comments. And 2 weeks ago, we had another elder African-American man sharing of the pain, and I think it's the one that's Culture Coffee too. I think that's the gentleman that was 2 weeks ago, and then Mr. Norman from today. I just want to like hear that sort of almost fatalistic sort of response to what was being shared, like what can I do? And coming from an African-American male perspective, I just feel that there is so much healing and honoring where those are coming from. And I'm 53, so your wisdom as older African-American men, a little bit older than me, just to think about, you know, how we are 7 generations from the ancestors and looking forward to the 7 generations before us through y'all's grandchildren. So I just wanted to really uplift that, and thank you, Dr. Edwards, for really naming and pulling together all these disparate pieces about where spirituality and justice have to go hand in hand. I'm just learning in my early walk with this work that folks on the streets and hanging out with the Black Lives Matter folks, they're yearning for spirituality that honors their ratchetness, right? The language of today. And our task, you know, as I really think centering of Blackness and centering, you know, I just one last point. I'm challenged this week to think about what sacred space is, and often that includes candles and blue, you know, bubbles. And I selected a picture that's urban New York City, right? Why do we not see that as sacred space? And that's a deep challenge, right? I'm 1 year here in Midtown Manhattan at this church, and my soul is ripped to shreds how unattached this church is to the realities of what's happening right in Midtown Manhattan. So I'm struggling greatly with whether New York is my calling after a year, and New York City in this area in particular, because there's a lot that is happening that we're so unattached to. So thank you. And to the brothers that are sharing the rawness of your experiences of like, there's nothing you can do. Your being here, it gives me life, even as an out gay 1/8 Chinese African-American man. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Chris Long. And I would ask you to put in the chat, where is your community in New York?
I'm not sure I want to bust this out that bad, but it's in Midtown near Park.
Okay, all right. I understand.
Yes,
I got
ma'am.
you.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
And I hung out in Oakland for 2 weeks this summer, so I know I got my t-shirt on, not even knowing I was representing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. The sharing, the vulnerability, folks. This is what Race Talk is all about. Thank you so much for being a part of this community and just being so real. Absolutely. So Brother Arnold out there in Culture Coffee too in Washington, D.C.
Hey, how you doing? And so my question is based on action. Thank you, Dr. Edwards, Lane, Eugene. The question is, and I'm using the word I corporately, what can I do? I invited a friend, and I see she's on today, and I made a choice to connect with a friend, which is why I'm in the coffee shop today. So I'd like to pose the question to Lane, Eugene, and Dr. Edwards. What can I do to help move this movement along? And I'm complete.
Reverend Edwards, you have the floor. Absolutely.
I'm going to start. I can always give everybody ideas about what they should do. I, by necessity, have to start with, I'm going to suggest that you do a one question visioning. That is, you get still, you get quiet in a sacred space, and follow your breath. And when you are relaxed, that you ask the one question: what is it that is uniquely, divinely, and perfectly mine to do at this time? That's the first thing. And then, now, if you want me to give you ideas for, you got a coffee shop, there's all kinds of things you can do. You can have meetings. You can have, let people advertise the events that they're having that you are in alignment with. You can do voter registration campaigns. You can develop or design. There's a coffee company here in this area that puts out coffees with names like Kamala Harris blend, or there's an Obama blend. There are like, only the imagination limits the things that you can do. You can have a safe space for, I don't know where you're located, but if there's any kind of school near you, you can have a safe space for kids, right? You can reserve, say, some number of tables for them to come and do their homework, the ones that might be latchkey kids. Again, I can go now. If you want me, we can connect and I can give you a list of things. But what I first and foremost suggest is that you go within and ask. Black Lives Matter mocha latte. I like that.
I want to also add to that, Rev, to ask that one question and be open and receptive and available to hear what the answer is, and then get into action, follow in the direction of the answer.
One thing I want to say about Brother Arnold is you are a total revolutionary, evolutionary, right? You are out there stomping the ground and supporting a whole lot of activity. And I know that's not your coffee shop, but you're there setting up a camera, right? Bringing the energy of race talk into that coffee shop, into Washington, D.C., right? On that street, on that block, in that building.
That's right.
I know that makes a difference. So I'm going to say you started a trend. That's an idea. Everybody next week, take your laptop to your local coffee shop and stream, race talk. Wear your mask. All right. I see you over there without a mask on. Yes, I'm calling you out. And that's action. And thank you for asking. Lemaine, have I said your name right?
You have, thank you. Thank you so much for this today. I just am really inspired. So to the point that some people have made about, the position societally, victim blaming, I think was the term used. I do think that, people that look like me have been deeply ignorant of the structural racism, the systemic racism, and how we have benefited from this structure. So I think that a lot of people think, oh, well, I just worked hard, and it not realizing that all of these structures have been in place. So what do you see? How do we partner to change some of these mentalities? What can I do? And if this isn't the right question for this forum, I apologize, and that's fine, just move on. I'm not trying to in any way move you from your point.
Continue to educate yourself and everyone that you have influence over, right? So an example, very briefly, when I was in my community in Vallejo, there are things that I would say pretty much routinely. And after service, invariably people would come up to me and say, well, Rev, I don't think we should talk about that kind of thing from the pulpit or whatever the comment might be. A colleague of mine, white male, came and spoke to my congregation, said almost verbatim some of the things he said, some of the same things I had previously said. Oh my God, I didn't know that. Oh, that was wonderful. This is part of the role of being an ally, is to speak to the one that's not going to hear it from this mouth or that I don't have access to. So continue to educate yourself and then preach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great question. Carmen, I think you may have the last question this afternoon. And welcome to Race Talk, Carmen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hi, Reverend D. Jacqueline. I wanted to say hello to you. And I
Hi.
wanted to, first of all, put a plug, piggybacking on what you said as exercise as a spiritual practice. I'm sure you knew I was going to say something about that. And also, you know, recommending also the book Caste is one of the fantastic books that I've ever read on history in the caste system in which we're a part of. And one of the things that's still not gets me, but still that the question that comes up for me when Isabel, if you've read it, she examines 3 caste systems, and Jim Crow, the Nazi caste system, and the Indian caste system. You know, how are we still host to these atrocities? You know, how are we still host to being a part of this system that is hating upon one another? One of the things that came up for me around her book was that white supremacy continues to exist because there still tends to be slavery that exists among us. And one of the things in still taking on the slave role is through our food. And I'm offering to people, especially African Americans, that we really look at what we're putting in our bodies. Our bodies are venues for creative space. And so it's really important, I don't know if you can see me, but really important
And now.
for us to be aware of how we are contributing, even as Black people, to this white supremacy, you know, to the slave trauma that we still live among. And the whole thing around exercise and or movement, it doesn't have to be exercise because there's always these thoughts of having to do this hardcore workout, but it can just be simply movement in the woods or around a lake, or just like yoga, just movement. But our nutrition, what we're feeding our temples, is very important. And as a health educator, you know, watching the numbers, especially among African Americans, of obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, and other issues rise, keeping our consciousness stuck in a way that we can't move forward and do our work. So I'm asking the question I'd like to ask Reverend Edwards. Can you share with us how the creative juices have flown from you as you've done your yoga work? What comes up for you? How has it helped you move forward? Thank you.
Real fast, Rev, I want you, because we don't have a whole bunch of time left.
I'm sorry.
That exercise is one of the many, many ways in which I get to be centered. And yoga, Carmen spoke it in, I'm going to keep it in the room. Yoga is one of those practices that just aligns everything, including what we then have a taste for, include what we want to eat shifts as we're doing that kind of work with the body. That's my shortest
Cool.
answer I can
Thank
give.
you.
I want just Carmen introduced me to, which I totally laughed at the time, a book titled Celebration of Discipline.
Yes.
Celebration of Discipline.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I went, what?
Cool.
So
Celebration of
thank you.
Discipline. Thank you, Carmen.
Go ahead,
thank you,
Lane.
Carmen. Thank you, Reverend D. Jacqueline Edwards. I know that you had some call to action for us. I need to get us off here in the interest of time. I want to let people know that Eugene and I are going to be hosting at an event called The Gathering. And it is being hosted by One Spirit Learning Center. It is tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. on Zoom. Please join us. I put that in the chat. There is a suggested love offering of $10, but it's just a suggestion. And we will be continuing this conversation of what is ours to do. Also, tomorrow night at 8, from 8 to 10, the Braver Angels organization is hosting a national debate on cultural responsive education. And Eugene and I will perhaps be speaking about CRT on that program, and you will have the opportunity to also speak or ask a question of the speakers. So if you'd like to log in, we also put that in the chat. I wanted to also give Eugene an opportunity to announce who's coming up next. Would you do that, Eugene?
Absolutely. Again, thank you, Reverend D. Jacqueline Edwards, for being here. Thank you, everybody here on the Race Talk Revolution family. We are conscious evolutionaries. And with that in mind, next week you want to be here because our guest will be author and anti-racist organizer, Mr. Carl Weber. Mr. Carl Weber was one of the persons on the last panel that we had. Mr. Carl Weber is of Rivertown Episcopal Parish's Action on Inclusion and Race, also known as REPAIR. Mr. Weber will be speaking with us about the work that his organization is doing to bring people of diverse backgrounds together to address racial injustice. Now, you, again, remember I was saying that he was with our Interfaith Council that we had at the end of our last session. So we look forward to having him back next week. We look forward to having you back next week. Again, on Race Talk Revolution, remember, your voice matters, but we also want to invite you to be here next week. Tell a friend and then bring a friend. Bring the coffee house. Great.
Thank you also to Reverend D. Jacqueline Edwards one more time, and to voice what you said, self-educate and share. Don't be scared. Get
Don't
into
be
the
scared.
world
Don't be scared.
and do what you are called to do.
Do what hurts your heart.
Don't be
Be
scared.
bold. We're
Don't
all
be
here together.
scared.
Yeah.
Reverend Edwards, 2 last words for you.
Listen, go within, ask, listen, be obedient to spirit, and participate. Let us make the world that we want to live in for ourselves and our 7 generations. Someone spoke that earlier, and our 7 generations forward. Thank you. Thank you so
Amen.
very, very much.
Thank you, family. See you next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Love you all.
Thank you.
Take care.